Valiant by Anne Gerd-Harry. Since the slaughter, proper sleep had been impossible for Masigo and for the remainder of his people. "Help us keep the night spectres away, Masigo. Tell us a story," said Nuru. With slow, rhythmical strokes, Masigo stroked the whetstone along the length of his blade, maintaining the steady sweep of his arm. He did not meet Nuru's gaze. Not tonight. In truth, the wellspring of his stories had been as dry as the summer riverbed since the night of the massacre. Nuru hunched down at the edge of the fire, and the flickering blaze highlighted the deep pockets of shade around Nuru's nose and in the hollows of his cheeks. As Nuru stared into the flames, Masigo recognized the hungry, ravenous expression that had overtaken them all. Their laughter had died, along with their families, and been replaced by an all-consuming thirst for vengeance. Masigo continued working on the blade. Working, somehow he just couldn't stop. A heavy hand fell on his shoulder. "That's enough. You'd better get some rest, all of you. The strike will be at dawn. Masigo, you'll be at my side." Masigo's chest contracted, as if a grip tighter than death took hold and squeezed. He looked up at the face leaning over him, and despite the heat of the fire, felt stone cold. A place of honor at the front, then he'd be one of the first to claim a kill. Just revenge for losing every single member of his family. "Yes, uncle," he replied, using the traditional form of respect. The older man turned away, and with heavy steps he faded into the dusk beyond the circle of firelight. He called a parting remark over his shoulder. "Rest now, Masigo Akeni." Akeni meant the acclaimed or valiant, a name assigned to Masigo at his transition to young adult. The name now fell dead and meaningless on Masigo's ears, as lifeless as the body of his favourite sister when he'd picked her from the ditch amidst severed heads and limbs. She must have run there to try to hide from the rape and murder, and though he'd searched for the bodies of his younger brothers, they were nowhere to be found, marking them to have been seized as boy soldiers. Masigo had earned the name Akeni. A rogue injured leopard had attacked during the day. The adults had been away, and amongst his group of peers, he was the only one with the presence of mind to drive it away from the younger children. When he'd faced the huge yellow eyes, full of deadly intent, Masigo had felt his own heart slow its tempo. Later, his father told him that only happened to those who were truly brave. That Masigo now knew fearlessness and could always rely on his own strength. It had made Masigo proud. He continued working on his blade, the silver edge gleaming ever sharper. Beyond the circle of light, his friends spoke in whispers. He caught the fear and the admiration in their voices. Masigo will lead the raid. He recognized the voice of Kwame with a runner's legs, who could endure like the wind and outdistance them all, who had the eyes of a hawk and loved the high-flying falcons, and always dreamed of training one to come to his arm, or used to dream of it. Surely all their dreams had fled. Yes, we'll take them like dead meat, squeeze the life from their pitiful throats, till they beg us to kill them, said Nuru. Nuru spoke the torture they all endured, and the edge of violence in his voice made Masigo feel sick. Finally sliding the blade into its cover, Masigo clenched and unclenched his hands. He raised his palms to the fire, but no heat penetrated. The older men said that none of them would feel again until they'd avenged their dead, that their mothers and lost relatives demanded it from beyond the grave. No one else questioned the rightness of those words. Kwame came to his side. Masigo knew Kwame must be frightened. Unlike Masigo, he wasn't a natural fighter. Ready for it? Kwame asked. Masigo looked into his friend's dark eyes and saw the horror and the terror playing like currents in an engorged river, in the part where everyone knows never to cross, because you're going to get swept away. Are you ready for it yourself? After what they did, I'm ready for anything, Kwame said. Masigo heard the truth and the lie at the same time, and he turned his profile away and hid his face in darkness. Killing a beast is one thing. But killing another man, that's completely different. Kwame remained silent. Neither of them said aloud that which none of their group had dared to say. They would be killing men, but not just men, whole families, women and children. But if Masigo refused to stand alongside Uncle, he'd be branded a deserter, not worthy to be one of them, an outcast, and he'd be forever treated as one of the enemy. Masigo tried to swallow the bile, but his whole being was filled with it. No wonder no more stories came to him. Their source had been poisoned by the pain of the massacre, but more so by the torrent of bloodlust which coursed through them all, contagious, dominant, all-consuming. More intoxicating even than the hallucinogens he'd seen the older men passing amongst them these last few nights, a measure reserved for extremes, to fortify the soul against evils. Kwame studied him with those hawk eyes of his, the type of eyes which can spot the slightest speck of movement from way up, see it, recognize it, name it. Do you think I don't know you, Masigo? Don't know exactly what you're thinking? Masigo faltered. For a moment, part of him drifted back to all the carefree days they'd played together as boys, all their games of pretend warfare, all the dares down by the river. Coward, worthless traitor. He heard the words ringing before they came out of Kwame's mouth, and hot shame flushed his face. He hung his head. How could he dare to think of escaping? Where would he run to? The traveller said there was a high pass over the mountains, and a trail which went through the clouds themselves, bone cold. But far away the traveller said there were people unlike them, with stories unlike theirs. Those people lived in a land free from war. Perhaps there he could earn his way by telling stories. Kwame stood very still. Not a single word had come from his lips. He will denounce me, thought Masigo. He will tell everyone of my cowardice. You always were the boldest of us. How will you survive? Kwame asked in a whisper. Masigo raised his head, met those hawk eyes straight on, and felt deep tears welling for the first time since the annihilation. He heard a crack in his own voice. I don't know. Kwame glanced into the distance. The dark silhouette of the far mountains showed jagged against the starry sky. There'll be a light wind until morning. It will make the running swift. Masigo smeared his eyes with the back of his hand. Yes, and with a head start, he had a chance. They wouldn't pursue him too far, and certainly not over the peak. He took one last look at his friend, and as he slipped away into the shadows, the faintest of whispers followed him. Good luck, Masigo Akene. And for a moment, it sounded like the voices of his lost brothers and sisters. That's the end of the story. We hope you enjoyed it. Please comment, like, favourite, subscribe and share, as this really helps us out and it will help us to put more stories up on YouTube. The transcript of Valiant is currently available to download for free in the ebook Private Lives. You can find a link here, http:///angerdharry.weebly.com/private-lives.html. There are two ways to receive updates on promotions. The first, to receive personal reminders by going here, angerdharry.weebly.com/receive-promotionsnews.html. Please remember to put Enjoy English in the comment box and tell us which country you are from. Or you can check our promotions page regularly, angerdharry.weebly.com/my-promotions.html. Enjoy English.